Here we go.
In 2006, the first of 3 films were released that would end up redefining not just superhero or comic book adaptations, but the entire approach to genre filmmaking itself. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises brought Gotham's caped crusader to the big screen for the 21st century, turned Christian Bale into a superstar, put Christopher Nolan on the map as a director, and to this day are considered the high standard against which every other Batman movie is measured. So how did it all come about? I mentioned in another video how the 90s was a terrible time for the superhero movie, and the blame can unfortunately be laid at Batman's feet. After Batman Returns got lots of compliments for its dark tone compared to its predecessor, including McDonald's cancelling a planned Happy Meal tie-in because of it, the franchise was taken in a much lighter direction with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, with more emphasis on appealing to families and leading to those films being attacked for their camp nature and being considered 2-hour toy commercials. The latter was even accused of killing the superhero movie for years. But by the 2000s, the successes of the Blade, X-Men and Spider-Man movies meant that it was fair game to try again. Christopher Nolan had slowly been rising through the ranks with his acclaimed films like Following, Memento and Insomnia that established his reputation as an auteur, and he had visions of directing a big elaborate heist movie involving dreams that would eventually become Inception, and when he was offered Batman Begins, he saw this as a good way to get experience with bigger projects and prepare him for Inception. His approach to the Batman story was to properly delve into the origins of the character, which no other Batman film had done before, with even Tim Burton's first entry beginning when he was already in the suit. This was actually a risky move, and plenty of people told him no one would care about a Batman origin story, but both he and writer David S. Goyer wanted to reboot the character in the eyes of the public and get the audience to care about Bruce Wayne as well as Batman. Having viewed the previous films as style over substance, they wanted to ground the story in realism and remove any potential ridiculousness, emphasizing human drama. They actually took inspiration from the classic epic Lawrence of Arabia, and pushed for an all-star supporting cast to give the story more credibility and help with the epic feel. They also wanted to deviate from how previous films had focused more on the villains, and selected both Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow because they wouldn't be known to mainstream audiences, even casting Liam Neeson as the former because he had become typecast as mentor figures, and the reveal that he was the villain was intended to shock people. Christian Bale was selected out of multiple auditionees, including Cillian Murphy, who'd be cast as the Scarecrow, and chosen specifically because he would be best to play both Batman and Bruce Wayne, with Christopher Nolan describing him as exactly the balance of darkness and light that we're looking for. Obviously, everyone knows what a success Batman Begins was, and how it was followed by 2 more films that ended up redefining comic book adaptations to this day. So what was it about them that really hooked audiences? Batman Begins is kind of the perfect origin story for the character. Most portrayals tend to only show the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents, but this film properly examines what happened after all the work he had put in to actually become Batman. We see Bruce start out as being ready to murder his parents' killer, and then develop into someone who has a specific code that he doesn't kill, and also really examine his sense of identity while being both Bruce Wayne, the billionaire philanthropist to the public, and Batman the crime-fighting vigilante in secret, with his motivation being to do everything in his family's name, and then Rachel telling him his father would be ashamed, providing exactly the switch he needed to really begin his character development. Christian Bale brings a real intensity to everything he does with this character, and really conveying how Bruce Wayne is a scared little boy trapped in a man's body, whilst also playing Batman with a lot of aggression and instilling a sense of fear in his enemies that I sort of feel he lost a bit in the sequels. Besides Bruce's inner journey as Batman, the supporting cast is also so rich, with the relationship between Bruce and Alfred being the real heart of the movie. Michael Caine is perfect in this role, and you can tell that his Alfred cares more for Bruce than probably anyone ever has. This line will never fail to make me smile.
I failed. Why do we force? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
The film also builds the relationship between Bruce and Jim Gordon in a nice way, and some of my favourite parts of the film are actually just their conversations. Gary Oldman is really good in the part, and at the time this was a different role for him, since he'd be heavily typecast as villains, so it was a chance to see him in a heroic light. It was the opposite case for Liam Neeson, whose most recent role in memory was Aslan, the big force of good in the Chronicles of Narnia. So the reveal of him as the bad guy really packs a punch, and he plays a great villain. It's also very cool that Bruce has to learn to be one step ahead of him. Like the train fight where Ra's al Ghul thinks he has won it, but Bruce was way ahead of him, creating a nice motif of the student surpassing the master, and showing that Batman is very intelligent in addition to his physical strength. Unfortunately for me, the Scarecrow feels a bit wasted, and could have used a lot more screen time. Cillian Murphy was really good though. Overall, the film was a lot more sophisticated than audiences were used to seeing from Batman adaptations, and the depth it brought to the story was incredible. There's even one specific choice with the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents that is so genius. They're shot while out seeing an opera, specifically Mephistophel, which is about the battle between good and evil for a man's soul. The devil costumes scare Bruce, so he asks to be taken outside, and it's there that his parents are shot. So the images of death and demons are tied to that night in Bruce Wayne's mind from then on, and a big theme in the movie is facing your fears, with Bruce choosing a bat for his iconography because he's always been afraid of them. But of course, audiences still had Batman and Robin in their minds, and they were a bit hesitant to give Batman Begins a chance. So its opening weekend wasn't great, but good word of mouth soon saw it eventually quadrupling its opening weekend take and being a huge hit on home video, so of course that meant a sequel. The Dark Knight ended up having the biggest impact on pop culture out of the three in the trilogy, but unfortunately, not just for how good a film it was. Australian actor Heath Ledger had been cast as the most remembered member of Batman's Rogues Gallery, the Joker, and people legitimately lost it at the news. While he had been slowly earning acclaim as a serious actor in things like Brokeback Mountain, most people remembered him as a teen heartthrob in lighter roles like 10 Things I Hate About You or A Knight's Tale. And the Joker had been defined by either Jack Nicholson in the 1989 film or Mark Hamill's voice work in the animated series. And even Heath Ledger himself was worried about having to follow Jack Nicholson. So the majority of people complained about him being a terrible casting choice. But before the film was even released, he tragically passed away, meaning The Dark Knight would suddenly become his final completed performance. And with his posthumous Best Supporting Actor win, he ended up becoming the first actor to win an Oscar for playing a comic book character. And speaking of the Oscars, The Dark Knight became infamous along with the Pixar film WALL-E for being snubbed out of the Best Picture nominations despite their critical and commercial successes in favour of, say, a formulaic Holocaust drama like The Reader. And the following controversy over what we now mockingly call Oscar bait led to the Best Picture category being expanded to now have 10 nominations instead of 5. So while The Dark Knight is responsible for all of that, how does it actually hold up as a film? First of all, Heath Ledger's Oscar win is extremely well deserved, and his performance is worthy of every bit of hype it gets. His Joker is my favourite incarnation of the character by far. From the opening scene, which is amazing, you see how ruthless he is and how far he'll go to get what he wants, even hiring goons and killing them. It just sets the tone for the film and you know it's going to be great from there. And the scene where he meets the mobsters, which is the first time we get to hear him talk, he just commands the spotlight in a way that is just so chilling. The "why so serious" scene is what really makes him scary to me. He's so unhinged that he feels absolutely nothing when he kills someone. When he crashes the party, you could hear a pin drop with how well this scene uses silence to show how he controls the room. And it might be hard to comprehend now, since the second act twist of the villain being captured on purpose has been copied in so many subsequent films, but that was genuinely new and unexpected when the Joker did it. And for some extra yikes, that pencil magic is very real and there are reports of people surviving it. There is a very good reason this incarnation of the character and the performance are so iconic. But this movie isn't just the Joker, and there's plenty of good to go around. Our second villain is Harvey Dent, played by Aaron Eckhart, in one of the best performances of his career. In contrast to the Joker, who we know nothing about, we see his rise and fall in such a tragic way. As him and Batman say in the movie,
"You either die a hero,
Or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain."
while Heath Ledger deserved all his praise and accolades, let it not be said that Aaron Eckhart isn't also amazing in this role. His performance breaks your heart and it's a real shame it isn't talked about with the same reverence. Outside the villains, you see a change in Bruce now that he's established as Batman, and Rachel has moved on to a new man in Harvey. This is the first time in the movies that we ever see Bruce Wayne willing to give up being Batman if it will mean being with the woman he loves, which admittedly loses a little power due to Rachel being recast with Maggie Gyllenhaal, since Katie Holmes was committed to a film called Mad Money. I'm never a fan of franchises recasting people outside of reboots, but Maggie Gyllenhaal does a good job, and she even improvised Rachel being unable to look the Joker in the eye because she found Heath Ledger that unsettling in full makeup. As for Bruce himself, Christian Bale has hit his stride for the most part in this film, hitting the nail on the head with the right way to contrast Bruce's public persona with the Batman one, which you can really see in scenes like the dinner between him, Natasha, Rachel and Harvey. We also get some really nice scenes developing his relationship with Lucius Fox, and of course more heartfelt Alfred moments. I could do without the stupid Batman voice though.
Where are they?
Killing is making a choice.
Where are they?
Choose between
You also see Christopher Nolan getting far more comfortable with action scenes this time around, with some really cool ones like the Batmobile chasing after the Joker, and especially where he uses his sonar tech in a construction building and fights off the SWAT team to protect the hostages. I'll also always love the coolness of the Batbike and the way its wheels move. And fun fact, the Lamborghini Bruce drives elsewhere in the film is a Murcielago, which translates as Bat, meaning Bruce is still technically driving a Batmobile. But besides all that, the film isn't just gritty for the sake of it. It has a lot of powerful thing to say on the nature of humanity, idols, and the structures we have in place. What this film says and does is really revolutionary, and while it does get overhyped sometimes, it's more than worthy of that hype. The Dark Knight Rises was released in 2012 in a very different film landscape to when the first two had come out. First, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was now well and truly established, bringing comic book movies into a new boom period and giving everyone else some pretty steep competition. Second, Christopher Nolan had finally achieved his dream of bringing Inception to the big screen, meaning he wasn't using the Batman films as a testing ground anymore, and he only made this one in exchange for getting the funding for Inception. And third, Heath Ledger was no longer with us, and The Dark Knight had actually set things up for the Joker to be a major part of the third film, and Christopher Nolan was adamant that the role wouldn't be recast. In fact, the Gamble character was supposed to survive the second film and play a role in the Joker taking over Gotham, but after Heath's death, the film was re-edited to kill him off. The studio pushed for the Riddler to be the main villain, with Leonardo DiCaprio as their preferred choice. Nolan, however, wanted someone to contrast with the previous villains, especially the Joker, who he described as an example of diabolical, chaotic anarchy, and the new villain would be a more physical presence, like a classic movie monster. And so he pushed for Bane, who had been previously used in Batman and Robin in a wildly unpopular portrayal. The role went to Tom Hardy, who had experienced a career downturn in the 2000s thanks to the failure of Star Trek Nemesis, but was beginning to regain prominence, actually thanks to appearing in Inception and being chosen based on his work there. He gained £30 for the role, later joking that the training probably damaged his body. Like The Dark Knight, we open with a scene introducing our villain in a touch that I love. Tom Hardy is very sinister in the part, and this Bane is so brutal, doing things like choking a sewer thug to death in 2 seconds. And for a bit of a personal connection, that actor Cameron Jack, who was the sewer thug, gave lectures on acting while I was at university. And with Rachel being killed off in the second film, that left an opening for a new female lead, and this one actually gave us 2 in response to criticisms about lack of interesting female characters in the previous films. First, we have French actress Marion Cotillard, fresh off her Oscar win for La Vie en Rose, who had also worked with Christopher Nolan in Inception, playing a seemingly original character in businesswoman Miranda Tate, but the twist is that she's actually Talia al Ghul, daughter of Ra's al Ghul, and wanting to destroy Gotham to avenge him, with Bane being her heavy. But the lady everyone was really talking about was...
Oops.
The Catwoman character had not had an easy trajectory on the big screen. While Michelle Pfeiffer's work in Batman Returns set the bar very high, and the character herself still holds up, she was radically different to what Selena Kyle was actually like in the comics, making it very tricky to create a new version of her that was more canon accurate. And the infamous disaster that was the 2004 Catwoman movie was still fresh in people's minds. They previously ruled out using Catwoman in the Nolanverse back when the second film was in production, but obviously they changed their minds. Nearly every actress in Hollywood was considered, with Jessica Biel being very confident that she would get it, but it went to Anne Hathaway. Like Heath Ledger as the Joker, she was an unexpected choice, as she had first gotten fame for Disney films like The Princess Diaries, but she too had earned critical acclaim and an Oscar nomination for Rachel Getting Married, and had starred with Heath himself in Brokeback Mountain. In fact, her typecasting plays a big part in making her introduction scene so effective, with how she tricks you into thinking you're watching a typical Anne Hathaway character and then mask off. She plays this character so well in a really unexpected way, and it adds nicely to the story. It's not easy to follow Michelle Pfeiffer, but she took the role and made it her own. And this has the saddest situation for Bruce, where thanks to losing Rachel and taking the fall for Harvey Dent's crimes, he's washed up and defeated. Having pushed everyone away because of his inner demons, feels like Batman is all he is and all he has. In fact, during his first fight scene with Bane, Christian Bale plays it almost like he wants to be defeated, and he puts so much pain into his performance that you start to suspect that this Bruce might be a Death Seeker now. And this of course gives us a beautiful scene again between him and Alfred, where the latter talks about envisioning Bruce retiring one day and living a peaceful life, letting someone else take over, and that's exactly what happens. This is the true hero's arc, completing what the first film set up. Bruce falls to his lowest point and rises again to save Gotham once more, but he actually gets a happy ending. He and Selena retire for a beautiful, peaceful end. It can be very hard to make an ending like that work for a character like Batman, as evidenced when Spectre tried to do that with James Bond, but the chemistry between Christian Bale and Anne Hathaway makes you believe that Bruce would happily give up his dark, painful life and take a chance on this lady. And of course, it's not as though he leaves Gotham without a hero, as a new seemingly original character is introduced, John Blake, played by yet another Inception cast member, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who had actually starred with Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You, and in his last scene, he's revealed to be Robin. It would have been cool to see him become that character in a dark way, to get away from the corniness of Batman Forever, but oh well. Everyone involved made it clear that there would not be another film in this series. Despite shared universes being very in around the time, this one came out, and you have to respect them for having artistic integrity. So that is the Dark Knight trilogy. Often imitated, rarely topped, and always remembered. They are most people's favourite series of Batman films, and it's not hard to see why. While The Dark Knight tends to be considered the best, and it's definitely the most remembered, everyone in the trilogy is its own kind of great. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let me know your thoughts on the Dark Knight trilogy below.